Rex, did you do it?
Is this architect a serial killer cops have been hunting for 13 years?
Rex Heuermann, a New York City architect, lived what seemed like a quiet suburban life in Massapequa Park. But on July 13, 2023, his world collapsed when investigators connected him to one of the nation's most chilling unsolved cases, the Gilgo Beach murders. This case traces back to 2010, when police discovered 10 sets of human remains along a stretch of Ocean Parkway on Long Island. For more than a decade, the investigation stalled, haunted by dead ends and shifting theories. Heuermann's arrest sent shockwaves through Suffolk County, opening old wounds for families who had waited years for answers. Now, after months of silence, investigators have revealed a major breakthrough. New evidence and fresh leads have pushed the case forward, shedding light on areas that were once clouded in uncertainty and hinting at what could finally bring resolution to one of Long Island's darkest mysteries. On May 1st, 2010, a 24-year-old female escort, Shannon Gilbert, vanished after a frantic 911 call from Oak Beach.
State Police.
Yeah, there's somebody after me.
I'm sorry?
There's somebody after me.
Where are you?
After this chilling call, the Suffolk County Police Department responded and arrived at the location an hour later. Upon arrival, Gilbert was nowhere to be found. That call and her disappearance pushed the police and volunteers to search the area near Ocean Parkway. Months passed with no answers, and it seemed like the case was about to go cold until something remarkable happened during the search for the 24-year-old escort. On December 11, 2010, nearly 4 months after her disappearance, a cadaver dog from the K9 unit following Shannon's trail suddenly picked up a scent and found a skeleton wrapped in disintegrating burlap along Ocean Parkway. The remains were later identified as Melissa Barthelemy, a 24-year-old escort worker, just like Shannon. The discovery prompted investigators to expand their search. Over the next 2 days, they found 3 more bodies within a short distance: Amber Lynn Costello, Megan Waterman, and Maureen Brainerd Barnes. Those 4 would come to be known as the Gilgo 4. All 4 victims were young, petite women who did sex work and placed ads online, specifically on Craigslist. 3 of the 4 were found wrapped in burlap, and their bodies were located within roughly 500 feet of each other along the same stretch of road. The way the bodies were left, along with the similarities among the victims, made investigators believe the cases were connected. Investigators immediately began combing records and missing person reports, trying to match the names with threads of evidence. Between March and April 2011, 6 more sets of remains were found in Suffolk and Nassau counties. Some of those finds were partial remains, dumped in different spots, and investigators later tied a few of them to earlier missing person reports. The total number of sets found in that period reached 10, including cases that dated back years.
Remember, they were found last fall in these burlap bags. Then another body was found last week. So the first 4 all were identified as prostitutes. So now here, do the quick math, that's 8 deaths.
Despite all the findings made, Shannon's remains were still not found. However, in December 2011, this would change. Her body was located in marshland about 7 miles from where the others were discovered. According to officials at the time, she may have wandered into the marsh and drowned. Her family, however, disputed it. Her mother, Mari Gilbert, pushed for more searches and for the case to stay active, arguing that her daughter's death was connected to the other discoveries. That pressure kept the case in the headlines, and it kept detectives working through stacks of reports and tips. From the moment those bodies appeared, the families and reporters criticized the investigation. According to them, evidence was mishandled, leads were not followed, and the case was hindered by bureaucratic conflicts within the police department. At the time, Suffolk County Police Chief James Burke oversaw the Gilgo Beach investigation. His refusal to work with outside agencies slowed the Gilgo investigation to a crawl, almost turning it into an unsolvable cold case. It took almost a decade for a cold trail to warm up again. From 2010 through the late 2010s, the Gilgo Beach case stalled. Files sat in storage and leads faded, but then in early 2022, Suffolk County brought in a new task force to take a fresh look at the case. Police Commissioner of the Suffolk County Police Department, Rodney Harrison, and District Attorney, Ray Tierney, formed with members from local detectives, state police, federal agents, and prosecutors. Their mission was to go through every scrap of evidence with fresh eyes. The new team worked like a machine. They subpoenaed cell site data, examined shopping records, reviewed search histories, and reviewed millions of archived documents. One of the biggest clues came from cell phone records. The detectives traced the victim's activity and matched it against a trail of burner phones. A notable pattern was that the calls to the victims and their families coincided with movements between two locations. In the daytime, the phones pinged near Midtown Manhattan, in the area around Madison Square Garden and Penn Station. At night, the same devices targeted towers near Massapequa Park, a quiet Long Island suburb about half an hour from Gilgo Beach. One timeline in particular grabbed the attention of the task force. On September 1st, 2010, the day before one of the Gilgo 4 victims, Amber Costello, disappeared, a burner phone pinged near Massapequa Park. That same evening, a man posing as a client arrived at Amber's home in West Babylon, having paid her up front for the service. But Amber and a friend decided to stage a trick beforehand. The friend pretended to be an angry boyfriend and scared the man off, while Amber kept the money without rendering the service. The setup actually worked, but it came at a cost. The client called back the next day, asking for another meeting. That was the last time Amber was seen alive. This pushed the task force to focus on the man's description. According to the witness's report, he was huge, standing at 6'4" or taller, broad with dark bushy hair, old-style glasses, and a heavy frame. An important detail was that he drove a Chevrolet Avalanche, which is a distinctive vehicle. The task force dug up the old Chevrolet Avalanche lead and began checking who in the area owned one. Among the names, one man stood out. Not only did he drive the same truck seen near Amber Costello's home the day before she disappeared, but he also fit the description perfectly: tall, broad, with thick glasses and bushy hair. His name was Rex Heuermann. Rex Heuermann's name had never appeared in the investigation until March 2022, which was a major oversight by the previous police administration led by James Burke. Heuermann was a wealthy architect and a father of two, who had founded Rex Heuermann Consultants and Associates back in 1994, with offices in Midtown Manhattan. His firm handled major clients like Nike, Target, American Airlines, and Foot Locker. He lived in a modest house in Massapequa Park, a short drive from the spots where bodies were found.
Same exact workshop.
So?
I have one tool that's pretty much used in almost every job, and it's actually a cabinet maker's hammer.
Okay, cabinet maker hammer, okay.
It is persuasive enough.
Once Heuermann's name surfaced, investigators watched him closely. For 16 months, they tracked his movements and pieced together parts of his life. As the task force dug deeper, they uncovered fake Tinder accounts, burner emails, and online nicknames associated with the architect. They found disturbing search histories filled with violent pornography and graphic fantasies involving abuse. The material lined up with the behavioral profile drawn years earlier. Back when the bodies were first recovered, investigators had collected hairs from burlap sacks, duct tape, and the victims themselves. In 2010, DNA testing couldn't do much with those samples. But years later, with improved testing, a lab re-examined a hair from Megan Waterman's remains and produced a stronger male genetic profile. On January 26, 2023, investigators monitoring Heuermann in Midtown Manhattan observed him throw a pizza box into a trash can. They grabbed it and sent it to the crime lab, where specialists swabbed the crumbs for DNA. The sample went straight into testing, and then came the wait. Months passed before analysts finally had results. On June 12, 2023, the lab results were finally received. The DNA from Heuermann's pizza box matched the male profile from the hairs found on the victims. On July 13, 2023, after more than a decade of waiting, detectives closed in. As Heuermann walked out of his Manhattan office at the end of the day, plainclothes officers swarmed and placed him under arrest.
There's not a soundproof room. There is a vault where he secured numerous amount of guns.
After the arrest, investigators searched Rex Heuermann's house. They found a large stash of weapons, about 200 guns, for which he only had permits for roughly 92 of them. They also took any physical evidence they could get their hands on.
There's no plea. He said from the moment I met him that I did not do this. So we're prepared to go forward. We will defend this case in a court of law, and we will go to trial on this case.
Heuermann's first court hearing began on August 1, 2023, at the Suffolk County Court. His attorney, Michael J. Brown, entered not guilty pleas to the charges tied to the Gilgo Beach cases. In September 2023, one of the murder victims, Karen Vergat, was finally identified. Karen had gone missing around February 1996. She was 34 and living in Midtown Manhattan when she vanished. She had also worked as an escort. Sadly, on April 20, 1996, her body parts, which included legs and feet, were found on Fire Island. Nearly 15 years later, on April 11, 2011, her skull was recovered about 20 miles away near Gilgo Beach. For years, the remains were labeled Jane Doe 7, until the FBI used genetic genealogy to analyze the DNA and match it to a family member. Rex Heuermann's case grew even larger, as in January 2024, prosecutors charged him with the 2007 killing of Maureen Brainerd Barnes. But he pleaded not guilty, even after new DNA evidence linked him to her death.
Alleged serial killer Rex Heuermann is facing a new murder charge and is now accused of killing 4 women in total. Within the last hour, prosecutors in New York unsealed new documents and evidence in this case. Heuermann is now accused of murdering Maureen Brainerd Barnes, who was an escort and disappeared in 2007. Her remains were found near Gilgo Beach.
Then, on June 6, 2024, officials added charges in 2 more killings, bringing the number of alleged victims connected to him to 6. Those additional charges included the murder of Jessica Taylor in 2003 and the 1993 killing of Sandra Costilla.
Just weeks after investigators revisited the home of the Gilgo Beach murder suspect, tonight Rex Heuermann is facing new murder charges, now accused of killing a total of 6 women over the past several decades.
Jessica Taylor's case was brutal and stretched across years. Some of her remains were recovered in 2003, but key pieces, including her head, hands, and a forearm, were not found until March 2011. Those pieces washed up on the same side of Ocean Parkway where several other victims had been discovered, in December 2010. Taylor worked in Midtown Manhattan, the same area where Heuermann had business ties. Records also place Heuermann in Midtown on the day Taylor disappeared. Prosecutors say Taylor was decapitated and her arms were severed, details that underscored the violence of the scene. Investigators found physical links tying Heuermann to more than one victim. In Jessica Taylor's case, DNA from hair collected on a surgical drape beneath her body matched his. Another match connected him to Sandra Costilla, whose body was discovered in a wooded area in North Sea, Long Island, back in November 1993. Heuermann's case became even harder to defend because, that same day, Suffolk County District Attorney Ray Tierney, in an interview, revealed that the police had found some damning evidence in one of Rex Heuermann's 350 hard drives and other storage devices. Much of the data had been deliberately deleted, and forensic teams had to recover it piece by piece. Among recovered items was what authorities described as a planning document. It was like a checklist, organized into columns. One column listed problems to avoid, with notes on preventing DNA, fingerprints, witness testimony, and digital traces. Other listed supplies: rope, tarps, tape, medical gloves, cleaning agents, and specialized tools. One section was marked DS, likely short for dump site. It listed places that seemed to be used for body disposal, with notes on how to get there, the traffic conditions, and the surrounding natural environment. The writing was cold and precise, sometimes in all caps, as if someone had been methodically testing locations and methods.
A planning document which he would break his activities into stages: pre-prep, prep, and then post murder. And then we allege that there were also things in the document such as things to consider.
Some parts of the document were very disturbing. It had short notes like, "Get sleep before the hunt, avoid contact with the victim afterward, clean the bodies well, and destroy all evidence." Other notes appeared to be reminders to improve his methods the next time. Prosecutors stated that the file revealed each step of the crime was carefully planned, almost as if following a checklist. Investigators also found that his online searches suggested he had been studying news reports about the Gilgo murders. He may have done this to see how the police were working the case and to figure out ways to avoid being caught. More evidence also hinted that he may have kept victims alive for up to 4 days to torture them. Evidence also suggested he waited until his wife and children left for vacation, then used his home as a place to hold and control the victims during their final hours. On December 17, 2024, Rex Heuermann was charged with a 7th murder, the killing of Valerie Mack. Her remains were first found 24 years earlier on November 19, 2000, when a hunter's dog had discovered Mack's decapitated body in a wooded area of Manorville, Long Island, and her remains were also tied with a rope and placed inside a black plastic bag wrapped in duct tape. It wasn't until April 2011, more than a decade later, that additional remains were found, alongside several other bodies during the Gilgo Beach search. Heuermann was tied to Mack's death through mitochondrial DNA testing. Investigators found a female hair on Mack's body that matched the profiles of his wife and daughter. At the time, his daughter was only 3 or 4 years old, so authorities believed the hair was likely transferred from the family home. His wife was ruled out as a suspect, since she was out of town during several of the murders. On July 17, 2025, Suffolk County Judge Timothy Mazzei held a hearing to decide if advanced nuclear DNA evidence could be used in the case. Experts testified that a California lab, Astrea Forensics, used genome sequencing to study degraded remains. This method had never been used as evidence in a New York court before. The defense argued that Astrea Forensics was not licensed in New York and stated that using its results would violate state health laws. But on September 3, 2025, Judge Mazzei ruled that the advanced DNA testing could be used as evidence. Then, on September 23, he denied 2 more defense requests, one to throw out the DNA evidence entirely, and another to split the 7 murder charges into separate trials.
Discussing its reliability, we know it was used in California to catch the Golden State Killer, and so the judge in this case believed that the evidence was reliable enough that the jury should hear it.
The next court date is locked for January 13, 2026. But the real trial? That may not begin until late 2026, if it even happens then. Families who've waited more than a decade are now trapped in limbo again, facing months, maybe years, of delays. And the question still hangs in the air. Will Rex Heuermann ever truly face justice for the Gilgo Beach murders? Or will this case remain one of America's darkest nightmares?